Hey, one photograph, one mistake, and one of the biggest operational scandals of the 20th century. But this story doesn't start in Norway. It starts in South Africa, with a quiet schoolteacher who never dreamed of serving in Mossad. How did a camera become an intelligence tool? Why can an ordinary picture turn into a death sentence? And how did a woman who didn't exist for years end up teaching agents all over the world how to keep silent? In a moment, the story of Sylvia Rafael. No legend, no Hollywood script, just the perspective of what she really saw and what she never spoke about again. Oslo, 1973. A wide, quiet street. Cafe signs flicker in the morning sun. A woman sits alone at a small table. On the table lies a camera. Her gaze is still, focused. She's not looking into the lens. She's looking at the face of a man who has just walked through the door of the restaurant across the street. A few minutes later, that face will disappear from the pages of history, and her name will appear on front pages around the world. But not as an artist, not as a photographer, as an agent. Her name was Sylvia Rafael, born in South Africa, daughter of a Jewish father and a Christian mother, caught between worlds. From childhood, she was searching for a place that would be hers. At 25, she leaves the country. She goes to Israel. There, she becomes a teacher, and then a Mossad agent. Not by accident, but because she has a talent for seeing things other people miss. Sylvia was not looking for a weapon. She was looking for perspective. The camera she'd loved since she was young becomes her most effective operational tool. Photography gives her a pretext to be present. It lets her enter anywhere and leave unnoticed. It creates the illusion of distance while the lens records everything. Mossad understands this. That's why Sylvia doesn't go into combat units. She goes onto the operational list of cover agents, people who work in the shadow of the lens. In special operations, what matters is not just how you look or how you speak. What matters is presence without a story. Sylvia has everything: a European appearance, education, languages, and something you can't teach: the ability to feel tension before it shows. She is trained for high-risk missions, working in Arab countries, scouting targets, building information networks. But it all sits under one cover story: a Canadian photographer, Patricia Roxborough. On her negatives, you don't just see streets and children. You see embassies, military vehicles, diplomats' faces, architectural details. The photos go to news agencies, but the copies go to Tel Aviv. And there, they become first-class intelligence material. Sylvia never asks, why? What will happen to this person next? Will someone die because of this information? She doesn't have to. In the operational world, you don't analyze consequences. You execute objectives. Years later, Sylvia's work will stop being anonymous. Her name will surface because of a single mistake, not one she caused, but one triggered by a false signal. And then the world will learn that this quiet woman in glasses, taking pictures on the streets of Damascus, was not a reporter. She was part of one of the most precise and most controversial operational units of the 20th century. But before the accusation comes, before the words "intelligence failure" are spoken, you will get to know her story, not through newspapers, not through reports, but through what she saw, and what she saw before anyone ever really saw her. In a moment, you'll see how an operational identity is built. You'll learn the techniques of observing through the lens. You'll walk through the moment when a photograph becomes a tool of judgment. And you'll find out what happens to a human being who for years had no right to truly exist. How did a teacher become a Mossad agent? Tel Aviv, 1963. Sylvia sits at a desk, nervously chewing on a pencil. In front of her, a form, seemingly routine, an application to extend her stay in Israel. But when the clerk hands back her documents, there's a stamp on top that wasn't there before. Schrift by Tavn Hkhle, Shin Bet, General Security Service. It's not a mistake. It's an invitation. Graf Rene, South Africa, Born in 1937. Jewish father, Protestant mother. Raised Christian, but always feeling that she belongs somewhere else. At 20, she starts looking for answers. She studies languages. She reads about Israel. She learns Hebrew. She writes to the Israeli consulate. In 1963, she leaves for Israel. She wants to become a citizen. She becomes a teacher. But something about her draws a different kind of attention. Mossad doesn't recruit from posters. It recruits people who are invisible, but effective. During a job interview, for an education role, Sylvia says things that one of the officials doesn't forget. That she notices differences in people's speaking rhythms. That she recognizes emotions from the way someone finishes a sentence. That photography is a way to catch the truth before words can cover it up. To most, it sounds like poetic talk. To an intelligence professional, it sounds like operational psycholinguistics. Someone takes a note. Someone makes a call. Sylvia's training includes behavior analysis, how to detect lies without asking direct questions, emotional masking, control of breathing, facial expression, tone of voice, fieldwork, how to take photographs without looking through the viewfinder, building an alternative identity, becoming Patricia Roxborough, a Canadian journalist. Sylvia doesn't go through tactical combat training. She doesn't drill hand-to-hand fighting. Her weapon is presence without a trace. What makes someone give up being themselves in order to live as someone else? Sylvia wasn't a rebel. She wasn't a flag-waving patriot. She was quiet, thoughtful, able to survive in the shadows. The recruitment psychologist describes her as a person with excellent cognitive split, can perform two tasks at once, act, and at the same time conceal the purpose of the action. And so, photography becomes a way of looking at the world without having to participate openly in it. For an agent, that is priceless. Sylvia leaves the training center with a new identity, a new name, a new nationality, a false Canadian biography, and a letter of accreditation as a photojournalist for a European agency. She doesn't get a gun. She doesn't get a diplomatic passport. She gets a camera, a wristwatch with a microphone, and the address of her first contact, and one sentence from her superior: "Your job is to see, not to be seen." Sylvia Rafael was not a movie spy. She was a teacher with a double life, and her camera was the quietest kind of weapon. From now on, she isn't just taking pictures. She's recording a reality that others don't even notice. Amen, 1967. Sylvia sits in a crowd of reporters. She looks out of place. Simple clothes, silence, coffee, a notebook. Around her, cameras, lenses, interviews. But her camera isn't like the others. The point is not to get photos into the press. The point is to capture buildings, people, details the media don't care about, but the intelligence services do. 3 minutes later, one of the security officers throws her a glance. He doesn't approach her. He doesn't ask any questions. But she already knows. She has been noticed. Between 1965 and 1972, under the cover of a Canadian journalist, Sylvia documents social life in Arab countries. In reality, she visits embassies, checks security points, maps staff positions, and gathers information on the routines of Mossad's operational targets. Her photos are not published. They are sent to Tel Aviv by couriers. Each roll of film is coded, labeled, and hidden inside everyday objects. Why is a camera the perfect weapon? Because it is legal, socially acceptable. It gives you a reason to be there. The psychology of cover is simple. People pose for photos. They smile, they relax. They reveal more than they ever would in a normal conversation. Sylvia doesn't ask. She doesn't chat. She records in silence. And that is exactly why she is so effective. Her work doesn't end with taking pictures. Sylvia meets people from local cultural circles and NGOs. She befriends translators, mid-level officials, drivers. She builds relationships without pushing. Every conversation is a chance to capture operational background. What Mossad values most are the small details. Who has the keys to which door? Who always arrives late to the office? Who drinks tea? Who drinks coffee? Sylvia knows she's not looking for facts. She's looking for habits. Because habits betray people more than dates or declarations. Cairo, 1970. Sylvia gets pulled into a conversation with an officer from Egyptian intelligence. He has no proof. He has suspicions. He asks, "Why do your photos so often show only windows?" She answers, "Because through windows you can see people best." He knows it's a test. Reaction time, seconds. Facial expression, blank. Voice, steady. The officer smiles and walks away. That means she passed. What does the world look like through the eyes of someone who can't leave a trace? Sylvia doesn't keep a diary. She doesn't keep original prints. She doesn't leave souvenirs. But she remembers everything. For her, an image is information. A moving body is intention. A smile is a mask. A shadow on a face is the truth. In her world, a photograph is not a memory, it is evidence. And that is why her camera is often the most dangerous object in the room. Sylvia becomes a face that doesn't exist. Her name is false, but her gaze is real. She operates in crowds, in broad daylight. But every move she makes is part of operational silence. Munich, September 1972. The Olympic flame still burns over the stadium. But the atmosphere is no celebration. 11 Israeli athletes never return to the Olympic Village. In Tel Aviv, no one says revenge or punishment. One sentence is spoken. Everyone who took part ceases to exist. Mossad is given a green light for a global operation. Codename, Wrath of God. The team, selected officers, field agents, and Sylvia Rafael. The operation has 3 layers. Visual reconnaissance, identify those responsible for Munich, confirmation of identity, through photos, recordings, intercepts, execution, neutralize the target in a third country. Sylvia's role, memory camera. She does not carry out the killings, she does not carry a weapon, but her, "Yes, that's him," is the signal to act. The team trusts her. She has never misidentified anyone. Until now. Sylvia analyses airport CCTV stills, Olympic footage, travel documents, facial behavior, clothing patterns, gait, all with one aim: match a face to its context. Mossad doesn't eliminate someone similar. There has to be certainty, and Sylvia provides it again and again. Rome, Paris, Cyprus. In a few months, 3 members of Black September die on the street. In every case, the identification was made by the woman with the camera. She doesn't take part in the action itself, but she is sometimes in the same hotel, the same bar, the same frame. The photo she takes by chance becomes the basis for a death. What does someone feel when they point at a face, knowing that leads to elimination? Sylvia doesn't write emotional reports. She doesn't argue with headquarters decisions. She doesn't allow herself reflection. In intelligence, there is no maybe. There is only matches, does not match. That's why Sylvia is so effective. In her eyes, a photograph is not a keepsake. It is an operational act. For the public, she doesn't exist. For the team, she is invaluable. For herself, she becomes more and more detached from the world. With every photo, every ID, every mission, Sylvia cuts off another piece of herself. She can't afford to be wrong, but she also can't afford to remember everything. And then, a new target appears, a new mission, a new country, Norway, and there, everything breaks. Sylvia was a central link in Mossad's most precise revenge operation. Her role was not to fight, but to point. Her camera was the quietest, but heaviest, tool on the team. Lillehammer, Norway. July 1973. A small town, calm, clean, safe. Sylvia sits in a restaurant as she has hundreds of times before. This time, not with a camera. This time with an identification document. Target: a man believed by sources to be Ali Hassan Salame, the mastermind of the Munich attack. Sylvia looks. She recognizes. She confirms. A few hours later, the operation is carried out. Operational goal: neutralize Salama. Team: a group of undercover agents, among them Sylvia. Her task is simple: observe, confirm, give a green light. But this time, the man she pointed to was not Salama. His name was Ahmed Bouchiki, a Moroccan waiter. He had no links to terrorist organizations. Mossad was under pressure. Results were expected quickly. The sources were not fully confirmed. Incomplete documentation was passed down the chain. Sylvia did not have enough comparative material, but she still confirmed. And that was enough to start the avalanche. The psychology of an operational mistake is brutal. An agent is not allowed to hesitate. But when data is missing, the decision becomes a matter of intuition. And in intelligence, intuition sometimes works, and sometimes doesn't. After the operation, Norwegian police react immediately. The Mossad team is identified and arrested. Among them, Sylvia Rafael. Attempts to hide her true identity fail. Fake documents are found. Bugs. Contact lists. Norwegian authorities charge the group with murder and espionage. The trial begins. Public opinion is shocked. For Mossad, this is the biggest operational humiliation of the decade. Sylvia is sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. Official charge: participation in an illegal operation by a foreign intelligence service on Norwegian soil, plus use of false documents. Reports from prison describe her as calm. She does not deny her role. She does not make excuses. For her, the operation was a mistake, but not a betrayal of her principles. It was a decision, made according to procedure, even if that procedure was flawed. Mossad issues no public statements. Officially, Sylvia is classified as an agent acting at her own risk. After 15 months, she is released on parole and deported. The Israeli press stays quiet. The European press writes about the Israeli spy with the camera. Sylvia herself disappears. She does not go to the media. She does not write a book. She does not give interviews. The only witness to those events is her silence. The Lillehammer operation was a failure, but not an accident. Sylvia did not fail because she was reckless, but because of systemic pressure. For the first time, photography failed to reveal the truth, and that was enough to freeze an entire mechanism. Johannesburg, South Africa, 1980. Sylvia sits on a park bench. She's reading a newspaper. No one recognizes her. Children run past, a dog barks, someone eats an ice cream. An ordinary day. But inside Sylvia's head, there are no ordinary days. Every face looks suspicious. Every question has a second layer. Every moment of peace sounds like a mistake. After leaving the Norwegian prison in 1975, she is deported. She returns to South Africa. She doesn't take a public job. She doesn't talk to the press. She moves in with the man who had defended her in court, her lawyer, Aeneas Schutt. They marry. But this isn't a movie marriage. It is more of a pact of coexistence. She doesn't trust anyone. He understands that trust will never fully return. But they are together, and that has to be enough. Once an agent is blown, they lose more than a name. They lose the entire structure of their life. Sylvia has no contact with her old circles. She can't use her former identity documents. She does not exist in any archive as a former agent. Mossad does not help. Not because it doesn't want to, but because it can't. Officially, she was on her own. On paper, Sylvia is a teacher. In reality, she is someone history doesn't know where to file. Sylvia stops taking photographs. No exhibitions, no projects, no documentaries. Not because she's banned, but because the camera is a reminder that once it served something else. In her house, hundreds of rolls of film remain, but no one has seen them. They never went to a museum. They were never analyzed, because each could tell more than it should. Sylvia returns to civilian life, but she never becomes a civilian. She doesn't start a family. She doesn't build a career. She doesn't search for a second life. Instead, she reads. She listens to the radio. She goes for walks. Sometimes she writes, but she doesn't publish. Her only permanent ritual is silence. For most people, silence is peace. For her, it is the only form of control. 2005, Sylvia Rafael dies of cancer at the age of 67. Her ashes are taken to Israel and buried in Kibbutz Ramat HaKovesh. Among agents, no one writes about. Among those who never officially existed. Until the end of her life, she never spoke about her work. She never commented on Operation Wrath of God. She never described what she felt while looking through the lens, but her presence shifted history. And sometimes, that is enough. Sylvia left the service, but the service never left her. She lived in a world she herself had to mute. Her greatest secret was not the operation, but the fact that she managed to live without it. Tel Aviv, 2023. The Yitzhak Rabin Center. Photos on the walls. No captions, no descriptions, but every one of them taken by the same person, shown to the public for the first time. The author, Sylvia Rafael. Even here in the gallery, they don't call her an agent. They write, "A woman with a camera who saw more than she should have." Her photos from Egypt, Lebanon, Yemen, Jordan have survived. They are black and white, raw, unposed, but in each there is something more than composition. There is a gaze that isn't looking for beauty. It's looking for truth, or for something that can be passed on without words. After decades of silence, the photos start to speak. But are they telling the truth? In the world of intelligence, truth is never complete. So the questions begin. Who was she really? Did she act out of conviction or out of duty? Did she know the full story of Lillehammer? In Munich, did she identify correctly or simply according to the narrative? Official answers? None. Unofficial versions? Many. Books, articles, TV reports. Every author wants to have the last word on the woman without words. For Israel, Sylvia becomes a symbol of effectiveness in silence. For Norway, she remains a name in scandal archives. For the intelligence community, she is a textbook case. How to train, how to protect identity, how to remain silent to the end. The problem with myths is that they kill the person. The real Sylvia was complex, quiet, layered. The myth is simple, and therefore more convenient. Her photos live on. Her story does not, at least not fully. Her archive is incomplete. Her files classified. Her own words never spoken in public. So who was she? A hard agent? A woman at war with herself? An artist whose tool was taken over by the system? Maybe all of the above? Maybe none. Sylvia's greatest legacy is the absence of words. She gave no speeches, left no diary, wrote no book, and because of that, everyone can look at her story from their own angle and ask, do we really understand those who looked at us through a lens and not through their eyes? Sylvia Rafael became an icon not because of what she said. She became one because of what she withheld and what she showed through the camera. Her legacy is a question without an answer. Maybe that's how it should be. Operational techniques and tools from the life of Sylvia Rafael. Soft legend, soft identity. Definition: a false identity built on real details, used for long-term undercover work. Sylvia, Patricia Roxborough, Canadian journalist. Why it works: it builds credibility through half-truths, not complete lies. Fact: Sylvia's cover was so well constructed that for years no one questioned her professional role, even in closed media circles. Semantic identification, semantic ID. Definition: identifying a target by analyzing movement, gestures, voice, and clothing, when the face is unavailable or unclear. Sylvia, used in Operation Wrath of God, she recognized targets not by portraits, but by the way they moved and behaved. Why it works: The body can't lie for long. Identity is encoded in repeating gestures. Warning, mistakes in this type of identification lead to operational disasters. As in Lillehammer. Emotional neutralization, affect suppression. Definition: the ability to act without visible emotional reaction, regardless of context. Sylvia. Described by psychologists as having a high level of tactical dissociation, she could separate feelings from the mission. Why it works. Emotions reveal more than words. Whoever controls their emotions controls the narrative. Detail. During her arrest in Norway, Sylvia showed no surprise, panic, or confusion. Operational withdrawal, deactivation. Definition: the gradual removal of an agent from fieldwork, freezing their identity and network. Sylvia. After Lillehammer, she went through full deactivation, no official protection, no benefits. Why it's used? It erases traces, protects the system, isolates risk. The price? The agent is left alone with themselves, without a network, without a cover, without a sense of mission. Camera-based tradecraft definition, using photographic equipment not only to record images, but as a tool for communication, data concealment, and covert observation. Sylvia. Her cameras included hidden microfilm compartments, a directional microphone in the tripod grip, and other modifications. Why it works? Photography is a function, not a suspicious profession. It gives access to journalistic, diplomatic, and academic circles. Effect: the agent doesn't look like an agent, they look like an artist on the road. Intelligence mythcrafting, iconization. Definition: turning an agent into a symbolic figure, regardless of their actual operational record. Sylvia, posthumously, exhibitions, articles, films, biographies. Why it works? Societies need a face, even if that face itself was once a cover. Paradox: the less an agent speaks, the stronger the myth becomes. Why did all these techniques work? Because intelligence doesn't need truth. It needs the effect of truth. In the end, Sylvia Rafael stayed in the shadows until her death. She published no memoir. She never stood in front of a camera to tell her side. She never rewrote the story of Lillehammer or Munich. But her life is a lesson for anyone who thinks intelligence work is just action cinema. Real intelligence is silence, attention, responsibility, and the awareness that sometimes one photograph changes everything. If you want more stories like this, not about movie spies, but about real people from real operations, stay with us. If this story spoke to you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is a signal for us to bring you more, even more hidden stories. See you in the next episode.